Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the greatest recordings ever. And today we are talking about one which I've mentioned a couple of times. But, as I've said before, if we don't tell you what the greatest recordings ever on multiple occasions, nobody will remember them because there are just too many recordings of everything out there. And we've got to push the great ones. We really do. So we're talking today about Mahler's Second Symphony. Which we could talk about endlessly, couldn't we? Richard Strauss wrote to Mahler, or wrote to somebody, I think he wrote to Mahler at one point, that the one score he always kept on his piano bench was the score of Mahler's Second Symphony, he said, and I never ceased to learn from it, which is really something coming from Richard Strauss, who knew a lot. He knew a thing or two about orchestral recording and orchestral writing, and the orchestra generally, orchestration. That's what I meant to say. So, and Mahler too is just an extraordinary piece. It's one with such range and richness and variety and color and it's so big conceptually. It's endless in the amount of interpretations that it can sustain. Everything except the wimpy and the quotidienne. That it can't sustain. But then again, what can if it's great music? And this performance still blows my mind every time I hear it. It's one of those occasions in which everything just went right. And here it is. Leonard Slatkin with the St. Louis Symphony with Kathleen Battle and Maureen Forrester, two fabulous soloists. The St. Louis Symphony Chorus under Thomas Peck, recorded unbelievably beautifully by Telarc back in the glory days of Telarc, when they made astonishingly vivid recordings. It's not available anymore, I don't think. This was a mid-price reissue, by the way, of the whole thing. The original thing was like a box with two CDs. It still has two CDs. But I really, really can't get over how well this went. Even Leonard Slatkin actually mentioned to me once, and I have to drop names, that this just went well. Everything just went right. Everybody was kind of startled, because, not because they couldn't do it, but generally speaking, Slatkin is not known as a Mahler conductor. He hasn't done that much of it. His first symphony he did also for Telarc. It was okay, not special. He did, the Remo Mazzetti 10th or something. I've seen him conduct it, and he recorded that, which wasn't terribly interesting either. Not because of Slatkin, but because of the edition, actually. But he's not a Mahler guy. And I think that's great. Not everybody needs to be somebody who does everything all the time. And so when he did do Mahler, it was something of a special occasion. And as his recording of the first symphony demonstrated, it wasn't always a great occasion, but it was unusual. But this second symphony, they just pulled out all the stops. And the performance is not as heavily inflected as some people's, like Bernstein or Mazel or one of those people. Slatkin does not go in for extremes of tempo and rhetorical excess. That's just not the kind of guy he is. But he really understands the work. He paces it marvelously. And more to the point, what really matters is that he brings out all the color in the score. All the great big sounds that Mahler makes, with percussion and brass flying all over the place. And, he's not afraid of the gaucheries of Mahler's orchestration, the ironic sounds in the scherzo, the slapping strings with the backs of the bow. All of this stuff, it comes off with complete naturalness, absolutely gorgeously. And in the finale, he has amazing soloists, a very fine chorus, and most importantly, Telarc's sonics. Usually at the very end of the Resurrection Symphony is kind of a letdown, because it either sounds inappropriately churchy because the organ is like tubby and awful, or you don't hear an organ at all. Well, here it's incredibly well recorded and amazingly well balanced, with the organ lending weight and splendor to the whole thing. It's just incredible how good it sounds. I mean, and having seen the piece live like a million times and played it a couple times, I can tell you, it's a tough piece to pull off when you get to the ending, and when it goes well, there's nothing like it. I mean, it just leaves you a quivering heap of emotion, and it's over. And this performance does that. It really does, thanks to the amazing engineering that Telarc brought to the table. So if you can still find this, you should look for it. You should find it. It really is just incredible. And by the way, I did talk about this recording. I did a video, and I put a link to that video below here. The One-Shot Wonder Mahler cycle, an entire Mahler cycle by conductors who weren't known for doing Mahler particularly. And I put together a complete cycle with like 10 different conductors who did really fine Mahler performances, but who didn't go on to do cycles and things like that. So if you're curious about that, if you want to hear some really great Mahler performances outside, the usual Mahler ghetto, then have a look at that video too, because the link is right below. But try and hear this. It'll dazzle you. It really is. And if you don't like the more heavy-handed style of Mahler interpretation, try this, because it shows that you can do Mahler in a, it's not lighter, it's just less interventionist, less, point-making kind of way, and still have it be just as powerful, just as moving, just as intense, and even better sounding than those other performances. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.